thy holy name. Bless me that with the humming atoms I may attune my song to thine. It's allergy season, isn't it? I was telling Kelly this morning, my eyes feel like they're on fire right now from the pollen, but it's okay, I'm good. So last weekend we were in New York City for the Carnegie Hall commemoration, Yogananda's 100th anniversary of spending a week of programming at Carnegie Hall. And it was a really beautiful, beautiful weekend. We had the opportunity to tour Carnegie Hall, and that was really, really wonderful. I've been in New York, in and out of the city, living in the city for so many years, and I'd never been to an event at Carnegie Hall. And the hall itself was just so sattvic. It was so elevating to be in there. And many concert halls and performance halls of that time are very, very ornate, with gold leaf and beautiful motifs. And Carnegie Hall had a little bit of that, but it was just perfect. It wasn't overdone. It was just really lovely. And the docent that we had was wonderful. She brought us to some of the private boxes, and we got to sit there and feel what it felt like to be there. And then we got to go down into the dress circle and sit in front of the stage. And it was really wonderful to visualize Master sitting on that stage chanting to almost 3,000 people, "Oh God, beautiful," for an hour and 20 minutes, which is really remarkable. And the sound quality was so beautiful. But the overall feeling was this elevation, this sattvic feeling being there. That evening, we had our kirtan at the Rhode Museum. Nicholas Rorich was an artist from Russia. He was also an explorer, and I would say a philosopher. And the last half of his life, he and his family lived in the Himalayas, the foothills of the Himalayas. He toured India and Tibet. He painted over 7,000 paintings, and many of the paintings in the museum were from his time in the Himalayas, where he was visiting monasteries, and his own meditation practice was basically illuminating him. So that museum, too, was very, very sattvic, very elevating. But as you can imagine, New York City is not. New York City is Rajasic. And when we embody in the human form, we live in a Rajasic world. There's nothing wrong with Raja Guna. Raja is the activating principle of life, of the world. But we can either take that Rajasic energy and elevate it into Sattva Guna, or we can get pulled down into the tamasic energy. And I have to be honest, I was driving a lot from Brooklyn to Manhattan, all around the city. And I'm used to driving in New York, but it was raining, and there's people now on e-bikes that literally just cut right in front of you. And by the time I got to the museum, let's just say that my Rajasic energy was trending downward. But again, walking in, I just felt that beautiful vibration. And when we started to chant, we chanted, "Oh God, beautiful," I'd say for about 30 minutes, Kelly. And because I kind of was in that like Rajasic, trying to calm down, feeling a little agitated, the chant itself started to feel a little bit Rajasic to me, which is again the principle of moving energy. The difference is when you're chanting, even though it's a Rajasic practice by nature because it's activating, it's also sattvic because you're chanting to God and it's pulling your energy up. So by the time we stopped chanting, I'll be honest, I was starting to get like a little fatigued from the chanting and a little bit of a hoarse throat, dry throat. When we stopped, it was so powerful. Because we had been chanting for so long, there was this indescribable silence, not just in the room, but I felt an internal silence. And I could just feel that energy elevating and rising up into a state of sattva. And we want to be in the sattva guna to be in super conscious awareness. And that's where we need to be perfect, as Jesus was perfect, as the great gurus were perfect. And that simply means living from the spiritual eye, living from that elevated consciousness. The more sattvic we become, the easier it is to be in that vibration of God's perfection. Because what we do when we live in Christ consciousness, we're pulling ourselves up out of ego consciousness and truly living in an elevated form of awareness in the world. And we can go through the world with, in that way, in all of our situations, our relationships, in this elevated sattvic consciousness. I live in the middle of turf farms, my family and I, and all around our property are very, very tall old pine trees. And then across the turf farm, there's forest and there's a swamp, and we have a lot of birds of prey that live on our property. We have hawks, we have owls, and every now and then we'll see a falcon. And the thing that's remarkable about the birds of prey is they roost on the very highest part of the tree. And from that bird's eye view, they can see all around, not just our 2 acres, but they see the turf farm all around us. And even though it's a little sad, it's actually a thing of beauty to see them swoop down. And sometimes it looks like they're going acres away from where they're sitting, and they'll swoop down and pick up their prey. It's a very powerful thing because of that bird's eye view. They can see everything. Now, if a hawk or a falcon or an owl breaks their wings, unfortunately, they're not able to fly or to perch high like that, and they have to roost down in the weeds and in the brush, and they usually become emaciated and they die because of that. So it's really imperative that they can have that bird's eye view to survive. And it's a really beautiful metaphor for us as well, because we want to go through life in that super conscious awareness, which is essentially a bird's eye view of everything that's happening. It's a sattvic quality. Our version of a bird's eye view is living from the Christ center. And when we live from the Christ center, again, we're pulling ourselves up and out of ego consciousness so that we can see things in a very pure way. It helps us not to get pulled down, not to get caught. Nayaswami Asha loves that expression, don't get caught. Don't get caught in the weeds. Don't end up in the ground. Stay up high in that bird's eye view so that you can understand that a lot of what happens in the world, like to us and around us, it actually has nothing to do with us. It's usually the other person. If we can really remove our ego, me, my, mine, I, if we can step away from that and live in that bird's eye perspective, that Christ perspective, we can see that a lot of the things that would normally ruffle our feathers take on a different vision. We can see them in a different way.
And a different kind of prey.
A different kind of prey. Thank you, Kelly. That was a good one, Kel. So Yogananda said that chanting is half the battle. And that's why. Because when we chant, the night of the kirtan, there was someone playing the tablas, the Indian drums, and just that rhythmic percussion. Master said that rhythm actually starts to release kundalini from our Muladhara chakra, the base of the spine, and the seeds of past karma start to rise up. And then when we're singing, our heart expands because we're singing to God, and that energy can pass through the heart center and all the way up and elevate us into that bird's eye view. It's a very powerful thing. The other things that we can do, as we know, are practicing japa, repeating God's name over and over. It's a very powerful practice, as is Hong Sa. And of course, the most powerful practice, as we know, is Kriya Yoga. And when we practice Kriya Yoga, breath by breath, day after day, we're going through that same process of elevating our consciousness to superconscious awareness. And it's interesting because for those of you who are Kriya Bonds and for those of you who are on the way to becoming Kriya Bonds, there's a lot of preparation for Kriya Yoga, and there's a lot of, the first year, there's a lot of thinking when you're practicing because there's a lot, it's something that you have to learn. But over time, it becomes second nature, it becomes very easy. But there's a point for everyone, and I know I had this myself, where you start to question, is it working? Because you hear about how it transforms us, but is it working? And I had an experience of this. I had been practicing Kriya for a couple of years, and at the time I was teaching yoga at the YMCA. Some of you have heard this story that were in our Raja Yoga class. And there was someone who came in every week, 15 minutes late. And they would come in, and they would come to the front of the class and they'd put their yoga mat right in front of me, like a foot in front of me, and then block all the other people that were there on time. So after complaints, a few weeks of complaints, the next time that this person came in, I very kindly said, oh, do you mind just moving over a little bit so others can see? Well, after class, boy, did I get it. This person berated me and screamed at me, literally. People were coming from around the corner to see what was going on. This person was yelling at me, really, don't you ever humiliate me that way, and going on and on and on. And I remember I had no reaction. I just remember feeling something happened inside of me where I had that bird's eye view. It wasn't conscious, but I was in that Christ center, in that super conscious awareness, and all I could feel was love and compassion for that person, because I felt intuitively that all of this anger had nothing to do with me, And I remember leaving that day and thinking, wow, that's Kriya Yoga, because if that were the old me, I would have given it right back. It would have been a very different scenario. People really would have been coming out of the locker room to see what was going on. And it's such a powerful reminder that that's how these practices change us. That's how we reach that perfection that we're talking about today, is through our own effort. And we become more responsive and less reactive. This person came back next week, and they came early, 15 minutes early, and they came to me and they were crying, and they thanked me for not reacting to them. And I realized that in their life, that was their model of communication. So it was such a beautiful confirmation to me that this just happened. I didn't plan it. I didn't, have to think about it. It was just, I responded. I didn't react. And that's so, so powerful and such a great reminder for us. Going back to the Anahata chakra, so when we chant, Anahata means unstuck. So when we chant to God, when we repeat God's name, that energy center becomes unstuck. And it's in that the energy flows up, that divine love for God that lifts us up into that bird's eye view. Yogananda said that the minutes were more important than the hours. And what he meant by that is, in every interaction we have, especially in something like I just described, where somebody is, upset with you, or you feel upset with someone, or there's some kind of conflict, you can either go down into that energy, or you can, at that very minute, lift your consciousness to superconscious awareness, to the Christ center. And when we do that, it changes the energy in that moment. It helps us lift up into that bird's eye view, and it helps us to be kind, compassionate, loving. In today's reading, it helps us to love those who curse us, So it's a minute-by-minute practice that we live in. And again, through japa practice, through chanting, if you start to chant, you get a chant in your mind and it goes in your heart, and it's throughout the day. Sometimes you'll be chanting that same chant. I know Kelly and I have that experience. If we're practicing for Sunday service and we're chanting, that chant is with you all week. So that minute by minute, thinking of God, staying in the present of God, minute by minute, what happens is, after years go by, you realize that you're living in God's presence more and more fully. And you're elevating your consciousness more and more fully. And you're having that transcendent perfection. It doesn't mean we're perfect by any means, but it means that in each situation, we can lead with love. We can lead from the Christ consciousness. And isn't that powerful? Not to get caught, not to get pulled into the drama, but to rise above it and to see it in a different way. Yogananda called that the 1-minute approach, by the way. So I'm going to end with something that Lahiri Mahashaya talked about in Yogananda's commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, called God Speaks to Arjuna. God Talks with Arjuna. So speaking of this minute-by-minute practice of practicing God's present minute by minute, Lahiri talked about what Kriya Yoga does for us. So listen to this. It's really remarkable. Those with much liberating karma from past life spiritual endeavors who give 3 years to deep practice of Kriya Yoga, according to the Guru's instructions, can become self-realized. That's pretty good, huh? In 3 years. So that's like a lot of effort of Kriya Yoga. Failing in that, a person with considerable past liberating karma can do it in 6 years under the direction of the guru. This is starting to feel more comfortable now. Others with some liberating karma can do it in just 12 years with the guru's guidance and blessings. All deep seekers, even those with very little past liberating karma, may find liberation in 24 years. Now, I've been practicing Kriya for almost 20, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And then others with no previous liberating karma, but possessing now supreme determination and the guidance of a true Kriya Yoga guru by deep and steady practice of Kriya, may be able to find liberation in 48 years. If that fails, he or she will be attracted to Kriya Yoga in their next life and will practice it deeply until final salvation is achieved. Isn't that incredible? Lahiri used to say, banat, banat, banjai, making, one day made. And what he meant was this minute by minute consciousness of God, that if we just keep taking 1 foot at a time, that we'll make it, we'll become self-realized. So every effort we make now, we start up in our next life. Maybe we don't have to come back. Maybe we won't have to come back. But if we do come back, we start where we left off. And isn't that amazing that we all love God and we all practice His techniques, this love, this devotion, chanting, that we're going to start where we left off. So imagine us as little children if we come back again, how amazing we're going to be in that consciousness. Think about that. We'll be like little yogis. So just remember, we are all little yogis already, but just remember this week, if you can think about that bird's eye view, which basically is living from the Christ center, if you get caught in a situation that's uncomfortable or a little bit triggering, just remember to take a breath, lift your awareness up, and try to respond instead of react. Try to respond from the Christ center in that 1 minute. And you'll see that if you do that all day long throughout your day, it can really transform us into the perfection of Christ consciousness, and that's what we're all seeking. Peace, amen.
So beautiful. Let's have our offertory prayer now. Please take what you'd like to give and place it in your right hand and repeat after me. Divine Mother, we offer to Thee the fruits of our labors.
We offer to Thee the fruits of our labors.
Bless this offering.
Bless this offering.
That it serve the channel of Thy light.
That it serve as a channel of Thy light.
To truth-seeking souls everywhere.
To truth-seeking souls everywhere.
Om. Peace.
Peace.
Amen.
Amen.
Long I've called you, my Lord, long I've called you. Many years I have longed for your sight. Bathed the darkness with tears of devotion, offered candles in prayer to your light. How much longer, friend, must I cry your name? I am yours, ever yours. Will you come? Long I've called you, my Lord, long I've called you. Many years I have longed
of light. Let us lift up our hearts in a festival of